And I've told people this over and over, but you can't get it till you get it. And you mentioned it yourself, which is just having more money doesn't make you feel more comfortable or more safe, whatever. Like, you have to figure out, what life do you want to live? Am I good with where I'm at? Like, and just adding more zeros to your bank account does not help you fix it. I'm like, what's the point?
What's the point if you don't know where you're going? Like, money for the sake of money, I would not object if I had millions of dollars. Like, I'm not going to say no, right? But at the same time, I don't need that. I do think that it's been a very gradual progression for me as I've gotten more and built more and more assets. Because initially it was really nice to say, like, I have an emergency fund. And in my mind, at least, I could say, like, I choose to be here every day. I don't need this job. I think that's a really powerful thing, because I think a lot of people go in and they say, I need this job, I need this income. And that could be very, very true. But to be to the point where I can be like, I don't need this. And that really changed a lot of my behavior.
Welcome to the Childfree Wealth Podcast, hosted by Bri and Dr. J, certified financial planner. Here we discuss life and finances as it relates to being child-free. This podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Please consult your advisor before implementing any ideas heard on this podcast.
Hey, Childfree Wealth listeners. So today we have a special guest who became kind of like an internet celebrity for like a week. I always joke about it, but like, things go trending for a while, but she's been a client of ours for about a year, named Stephanie Ramos. And she's going to talk to us about kind of like some of the choices she made in her life, all specifically as a soloist, some of those things. How does that impact? Also, how she got kind of internet famous for a little bit there, and how that works. So, Stephanie, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks. How are you?
Good. So, okay, we got to start with why you're famous, because like you got, I guess, LinkedIn famous. Is that what we call it?
Yeah, LinkedIn famous, and then I also got some a little bit of press. But the famous came from, I recently quit my job with Amazon, and I wrote about that experience on LinkedIn, and it just really blew up in a way I didn't anticipate.
So talk to me about that experience. Now, little context for the audience. So Stephanie and I were working together, and we had this debate about like file, hire, what's next in life. And we'll get back to that. But to kind of spoiler alert, she goes and gets a job at Amazon. And let's just say that didn't go as planned. Can you give us the backstory?
Yeah, for sure. So I had worked at Amazon for 6 years and then was part of layoffs in early 2023. And then I kind of did my own thing for about 18 months. And I had a colleague reach out and ask if I'd like to join his team. It seemed like a good choice to make. I was a little tired of being my own boss. But ultimately, a number of things just went very, very sideways. And you actually helped me a lot, Jay, kind of thinking through, like, do I continue on working this job that I don't particularly like and is not what I was sold when I accepted it? And ultimately, because I was in a financial situation where I said, no, I'm not going to continue on doing something I don't want to do. And honestly, through that process, I was really disappointed and it kind of sounds silly to say, but hurt by Amazon. I had such a good experience for my first 6 years. And then I felt like I was in an entirely different company, and that kind of feeling of disappointment and just really deep disappointment, I decided, I want to write about this and I want to share it with other people, because I'd been an advocate for Amazon and joining Amazon for so long. I was actually did many, many things for Amazon's recruitment process. And I was like a specialized interviewer. And I had for years said, yeah, Amazon's a great place to be. And it turned out this last, my second round, that was not true. And it felt like a big sea change in the company. So I wrote about that, and it, blew up in a way I never anticipated. I got very excited. Like the first day it got, first hour, it got like 1,000 views. And now I think it's close to 1 million. All to, for my story.
And we'll link to that in the show notes so everybody can read the story. But kind of what's the moral of the story? Like, you were there, 2-3 months, and then like you had moved cross country to do this, and then you decided, no, screw it, I'm out. Like, what's the moral of the story?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't like cross country, right? I moved states, but I think the big thing for me was really being in the financial position to be able to say, like, F you. Like, this is not working for me. And there's no reason that I need to be a job martyr. If it's not working, if it's not what I signed up for, I don't need to continue. And I can do that because I'm in the financial position to do so. And I think there's a piece of like, I was in a financial place to say F you to jobs for many, many years. And I didn't. And I finally gained the confidence to do so. I think probably in part by having a partner like you to say like, really, you're okay. You can do this.
So talk to me about like, how did you gain that confidence? Because let's be real, I have a lot of people we talk to that are kind of miserable in their jobs. Let's just be honest with that. But they're like, I can't quit this. I mean, I put so much time and effort into it. This is what I went to school for. This is what I always wanted, whatever their story is. But like, you did the tough thing. It was like, nope, forget it. I'm out. How did you get that confidence?
Well, I don't want to make it seem like it was an overnight decision. I think we talked about it for a couple of months, actually. But I think part of it was really sitting down and doing the math and looking at all of my assets and being like, okay, I'll be fine for a long while. Part of it was having gone through that layoff experience and kind of that ultimately being a really, in some ways, very good thing. Because it challenged me, it allowed me to explore being an entrepreneur, and I landed on my feet. So I had that previous evidence that I would be fine if I didn't continue on here. The other thing was just kind of like, I think a thing you say often is like, what's the amount of money you'll be miserable for? I decided that the amount of money I was making was not the amount I'd be miserable for. And in fact, I don't want to be miserable for any amount of money. My first business job, I hung on for probably 2 years longer than I should have because I was like, well, I've invested a lot in here and I have like fears about, oh, I'm not going to be able to find another job. And, maybe it'll get better. And I learned from that experience, any amount of money is not worth it to be really miserable. And in that case, I was like waking up every day, like crying, going to work. That was not the situation with Amazon. So I think I had a series of experiences over the last 8 years that allowed me to come to this place of pulling the trigger pretty quickly, where in the past I would have been like, oh, well, I'm sure this will get better. Things are changing. And ultimately, like, I got one life to live and I don't want to live it waiting for something to improve when I can take action and agency to go in the direction that I want.
And that's fair. We'll call it financial independence or FU money or whatever you want to call it. I mean, it's a lot of names, but you had enough that you could choose that. You gotta pull me back. And I know you did a separate article on this, but like, how did you get to a point, in your late 30s? I'm not going to throw out real numbers because, I can't disclose somebody's age, of course, but like, how did you get to a point where you're single and you got the money that you could tell Amazon what to do with their job? I mean, were you like born with money? Like, did you grow up, was this dropped off in your desk? I mean, how did that happen?
Yeah, no, I was not born with money. I didn't come from money. I as much as any one person can be self-made, I guess I'm self-made. And I've really been thinking about this a lot. Like, how did I get to the point where I did have that amount of money? Just be like, nope, no more. And I think one of the blessings was I started my career, my kind of adult life as a teacher. And I used that as a baseline for my finances for many years. Even though I made much more money, I always wanted to have all of my fixed expenses be something that I could potentially handle as a teacher, making significantly less money. I think it goes back to also like having a series of high paying jobs that allowed me to still do the things I wanted to do, but also save a significant portion of my income. And then the other thing is like, I spent money on things that I care about and I don't spend money on things I don't care about. Like, I've never wanted a gigantic house. I really don't care about a really fancy car. Like, I love my Kia, and making those choices allowed me to save. And then there's just that power of compounding interest, right? Like, I've had money in the market for a really long time. It's built up in such a way that I've gotten to this point. The other really big thing is I was fortunate to have my first business job. My employer set aside 25% of my salary every year for me in a deferred profit sharing trust. So that really gave me a head start on my retirement. But it was also on me to decide to stay in that job long enough to vest into that account, And I think some people might have tapped into a lot of the capital that I have, and I just haven't.
Yeah. And I have the good fortune that I've actually seen all of Stephanie's numbers. We've been working together for a year. I have an idea, but I think what I've found is like, we talk a lot about how to make your finances simple so your life can be amazing. Everything in your finances is really simple. Is that fair?
Yeah, super simple. I guess I've adopted like the KISS mentality, right? I don't think that things need to be complex to be effective. And funnily enough, I read Nate Silver's book years and years ago, The Signal and the Noise. And he has one chapter about, can people beat the market? And the conclusion is no one who picks stocks, who a managed fund picks the market. The most effective thing is just to put money in the market and do so consistently. And so I really took that to heart, and I was like, I'm not going to be like, I knew people who mined crypto and chose stocks and did all that shit. And I was like, I'm not interested. Like, I put my money in, have it, give me 8 to 10%, and know that in the future, I'm going to have the money I need to live the life I want.
Yeah. And by the way, it works. I mean, people are like, it can't be that simple and work.
It really is.
It can.
It really, really is. The evidence, the proof is in the pudding. And I wrote about this online, so I'll say it here. Like, I went from 0 to now my net worth is around $1 million. And that happened in 13 years. And it wasn't, oh my gosh, I picked the right stock at the right time. It was literally like, I've just been investing in funds that track to the market for over a decade.
Yeah. I mean, let's be real. You did break the system a little bit. Let's call it that. The story is, hey, as a soloist, you've got higher expenses, which is true. The single tax is somewhere between $400,000 and $1 million across your lifetime. But like, as a single person, you'll get ahead. Like, but you went against the system. You didn't come from money. You didn't have all this, and still now you're a millionaire. Like, how does that feel?
A little unreal. And I actually got to that million mark like a couple of months ago, and I was like, oh my gosh, I never thought this would happen. Like, in my mind, I was, when I was 18 years old, I was like, I'm going to be a teacher and I'm going to have like a modest life. And I'm sure as a teacher, you could become a millionaire too, but I never imagined I'd be where I am. And I'm very proud of myself. And for many years, I didn't feel proud of myself. I was a little ashamed by the amount of money that I made because I didn't feel like it was doing good in the world the way I was doing good in the world as a teacher. But now I've kind of said like, no, I've made this life that I love and I'm good to other people. And amazingly, I got $1 million, and that's really cool.
It is. And everybody thinks when you become a millionaire, I don't know, balloons fall from the sky and there's a big celebration, but it's like, hey, I've got a number on a sheet that says I've got $1 million. Do you feel rich?
I don't know that I feel rich in the way that society conceives of rich, right? Like, I'm not out here on a Bentley, doing the yacht thing or whatever, but I'm able to do pretty much anything I want to do. And right now I'm able to spend my time however I want. So I think that's rich. I have a really rich life because I have so much choice in my life. And part of that is the money, and part of that is, being a sink, having no kids. And I don't know, I love it.
Yeah, the way we say it is living a life of child-free wealth means you have time, money, and freedom to do what you enjoy. That doesn't necessarily mean you're rich, but rich has somebody I don't know, it's loaded as a term. Versus, I got the freedom to tell Amazon, go away. That's powerful.
Yeah, exactly. And honestly, I don't want to keep moving the goalposts. I really take it, I try to think about, what do I really value? What I want to be able to do with my life. And it's really simple things. It's I'd like to go on vacation. I'd like to travel places. I'd like to eat really good food. I'd like to have a place that I enjoy living in. And none of those things have to cost a lot of money. And I think that kind of perspective of spend on the things that I really care about, and the other stuff, get the things that work, that helps a lot. I haven't had a ton of lifestyle inflation where I could have, I could have bought the really fancy car. I could have bought a giant house, but those things are not things that I want or need.
Really, the bottom line is, you're kind of simplifying the finances. Amazing life. I mean, I know you were just coming back from, I think it was Tuscany. You've done a few cruises, a few cool things, but all right, your finances are pretty simple. Why did you reach out to work with a financial planner? And now I'm asking this question, a year ago, you reached out and said, "Hey, I'd like to work with you. We've been working together for a while, but like your finances are pretty good as is. Like, why get help?"
Yeah, I wanted somebody else to say they were pretty good. Like that had, I really value people's expertise. So I wanted an expert to look at my finances and go like, yeah, you're doing the right stuff. And we did some tweaking. He helped me save some fees and did some tax optimization and stuff like that. But I really wanted that kind of second look to say, okay, yeah, you're doing what you need to do. I think what's unique about working with you, Jay, is it's not only kind of a finances, like let's look at the numbers, but you continually, and this is why I continue to work with you, you've continued to push me to say like, what life do you want to lead? And are your actions, what you're doing right now aligning to that future vision? So there's like this life planning aspect to it that I found really helpful. And I haven't gotten in other experts that I've worked with.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, we've tracked it. We spend probably about 80% of our time with our clients working on their life, their way of thinking about money, like even just getting people comfortable with it. Like, you're okay. You're okay. I mean, like you and I had that "you're okay" conversation probably every meeting we've ever met. Like, let's go back for a second, because you were debating this Amazon thing or moving somewhere else across the country or kind of running your own business at a freelancing thing. And I don't know that I was 100% fan of you moving to Amazon. You and I had this debate for a couple months.
You're like, hey, weren't you enjoying doing the running your own business? Like, I was working part-time. I got total control of the hours I worked and how I worked and all those things. And I really enjoyed all of that. But I had this kind of like twinge of concern. I was like, because, the business had slowed down a little bit. My business had slowed down a little bit. And I was like, oh my God, I don't have enough money and this is stressing me out, which like looking back on it, I was fine. Like I've been fine, but hey, this is a real thing. I think I've said this to you multiple times, like intellectually I can recognize something, but emotionally it just feels different. And I've always been afraid of being in a place where I didn't have enough money, enough funds to like fund my life. That time I was like really anxious. And then I thought about it and I was like, I know Amazon. I enjoyed working at Amazon. The big draw was the person who hired me. I knew that person. And these are all things that we talked about that made it make a little bit more sense. And it just afforded me the opportunity to do some things I wanted to. Looking back on it, would I have made the same choice? Probably not, given how things went with Amazon, but if they had gone differently, I probably would have continued to work there, Well,
and I think it's not about like who's right, who's wrong. It's not about hindsight. What it's about is having that discussion. Well, why do I want to do this? Where do I want to go? What do I want to do with my life? Because the reality check is, you said, hey, I'm going to go to Amazon. I'm like, all right, great. Here's what we got to do. Here's what we do. Yeah, we work through the next steps. I'm on board, whatever decision you make. And what happens is, the discussion we had beforehand probably, at least in my mind, helped you to decide to leave. And that is like, I'm going to go take this chance. I'm going to do Amazon. Cool. And then you were there like a month and I'm like, you're not happy. Like I could just see it. Like the second month, I'm like, yeah, this has got to end. And you're like, well, and we started going back to a lot of the same discussion. And I think there's a point of like, because you had gone through the kind of debate, it kind of primed you to go, you know what? This didn't work out. Let me cut my losses and go. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think that's fair. And it all kind of comes back to that like view of what do I want my life to be? What are the things that I value? And one of the things about Amazon was I was never intending for it to be a long-term thing. Like I went in kind of with this idea of, okay, I'm going to stay for like 2 to 4 years. I'm really going to make bank. And then I can be in a position where like I never have to work again if I don't want to. The only reason I work is because I want to do the work, not because I need the money. And it would allow me to finally do the things I wanted to do. Like I was, thinking about a career change, actually getting into personal finance and advisement. But I think the really valuable thing is we've been talking about that end goal for a very long time. And Amazon was a potential path to that. But as it turned out to not be working for me, I could see alternative paths to the same kind of outcome and really recognize that I had the financial standing to be like, this is not working for me, so I'm not going to do it anymore. But it all goes back to kind of having that vision of the future and thinking about how is what I'm doing today aligning to that future that I want.
And that's fair. And I think the reality check for a lot of people is if you don't do the work on kind of like, what do you want to be when you grow up? Where do you want to go? What's your relationship with money? All that stuff that's kind of challenging to work through. Then when you get into a situation where things are just not safe, they're not what you wanted, whatever it is, you're kind of stuck. What tends to happen, at least what I've seen is, if you haven't done the work on the way you look at the future, money, all that, you go into these situations and you don't have any like leftover brain power to work yourself out of the situation. For you, when you were kind of like, yeah, this ain't working, you had already kind of worked through plan B and C and could feel comfortable versus if you were in a more of that fear base, you might have been stuck there until you found another job. Because just in case anybody listening missed it, she quit her job without another job or another thing to do. Like she was like, here's my notice, I'm gone.
Yeah. And that was intentional too, because I guess I could have gotten another job and stayed in that job, but I was like, no, I don't want to do this anymore. And I actually want to take some time off. So I did. Yeah. But having that, so I think for a long time, my perspective on money was like, I need to accumulate money because I need to accumulate money so I can be safe. And there wasn't anything beyond that. Like, yeah, I would have like a financial goal. I'd like to buy a house, or really it was the house. But there was nothing else there. It's just kind of like, these are the things people do. You talk about the life script, the common life script or the standard life script. And I was like, okay, these are just things people do. Like people have a job and they make money and they save money and all that stuff. And I think things really shifted when I started thinking about what life do I want to lead, regardless of my job, and really taking a step back and saying like, well, what amount of money do I need to do that? And where am I today? And kind of those questions really shift your perspective on, oh, well, I don't actually have to keep doing this job because here are the things that are in place that allow me to live the life that I want. Oh, I don't actually have to take another job. Like I don't have to find another job before I quit this one. Like I have the money that I don't need to. Having a really, to your point, strong understanding of what I want my life to be, at least right now, things could change. And knowing where I stand, that enables you to make all sorts of decisions that I know I wouldn't have made, 10 years ago. I would have just kind of gritted my teeth and maybe tried to find another job within Amazon or somewhere else. But no, this time I said, no, not working. Goodbye. I quit.
Which, by the way, I was very proud of you when you did it. I'm like, at some point, what's the point of having money if you can't use it? Like, if you are in a bad situation, you use money, you get out. That is part of financial independence. I was having this discussion, another podcast with Bernadette Joy, and we're talking about with politics and everything going on, like, because you have financial independence, you can move, you can go to different countries, you can do different things. For you as a job change, like, people think about financial independence like, oh, well, I want to retire, or like, I got to hit this number or whatever. But they miss, it is the ability to go, I'm in a shitty situation, I want out, and you're okay.
Yeah. And I think the other thing, my sister says I was not made to work. Which,
I don't think any of us were, but that's a separate question.
Yeah, there's a whole separate conversation. But one of the things I realized once I got laid off and then I was doing my own thing is a lot of the spending I was doing was to escape my life because I wasn't happy. Like I was stressed out. I was working all the time. I was like, okay, well, I can take this break. I can go and do this thing. And once I started living a life that was more aligned to like what I wanted my life to be, I didn't feel like I had to escape it anymore. And that was pretty amazing.
Yeah, I've tried explaining this to people, but it just, you can't get it until you do it. They're like, I'm in this high stress job. It pays me a lot of money. So I have to take these great vacations. Awesome. But if you had a job you enjoyed, maybe you could take not as fancy vacations, but enjoy your entire year more. Mm-hmm. And like, that's like, it just breaks people's brains because they get stuck on like, well, for 2 weeks a year, I get to go wherever, Bora Bora, and do my thing. Okay, cool. But you hate the other 50 weeks. Like,
yeah, there was one. So in that first business job that I was very glad to leave, one of the things I noticed myself doing is at that time, I really loved luxury goods. So I had bought like some Louis Vuitton purses and I sat it in my eye line at my desk. So every time I was like, I hate being here, I would look at the purse and I'd be like, well, I'm here because I can have this purse. And now my perspective has shifted. And I'm like, I don't give a shit about a purse, like a material thing. I want to have a life that I enjoy. And it doesn't have to include fancy stuff. It just has to include the things I like.
It's fair. So what does the future hold for you? You keep saying kind of like the bigger picture and what matters. Like, what does that look like?
I have been very intentional in trying to not do work for a couple of months, which has been a little challenging for me. And then I am looking into CFP programs because I want to become a certified financial planner and start working with folks. What exactly that looks like, I'm not sure. But that is the kind of one thing I've always enjoyed doing is helping other people achieve their goals. And I've had this, I feel like people think personal finance is really intimidating and complex. And I don't think that's true. I think doing financial advisement is a combination of two things I really enjoy.
I thought you said you weren't made out for work. Like, and now you're going back to...
Jay, if you can help me figure out a way to still go to Tuscany every other year and not work, like maybe we can talk about it. But I'm not at that place yet, I think.
Well, and I think there's a balancing act between doing work you enjoy versus work. Like, it's just a different, you get up in the morning for a different purpose.
Yeah. And I think like for me, I want to be engaged in something. I want to do something that means something. Getting money is nice as well for doing that work. Like, but I can't imagine a future where I'm just watching Netflix and trying out different recipes all day long.
Hey, maybe it is. At least we can do that part-time. Let's call it that.
Yeah, no. Still want to try a lot of delicious recipes. Still enjoying shows on Netflix. Even kind of thinking like, I'm 2 months into being a lady of leisure. And I'm like, I kind of want something that gives me, work gives you structure. Like I want something that gives me structure. I want something that means I engage with other people kind of like in an intellectual way. And those aren't things that I'm getting right now. The Netflix and cooking.
Yeah. I mean, and you're normal on that. I mean, my wife and I were having this conversation last night about like what happens when you don't really need to work and how do you find purpose and, how do you give back to whoever you want to give back to and how do you make whatever impact you want to make? And we're just not wired to do that. Like we're wired to struggle. Once you get past the struggle, all of a sudden it's like, now what? And that's where you got to, I don't know, take your little time. We actually prescribe to people, take 2 months, watch Netflix, do whatever you got to do. That's what you did. You did the right thing. And then it's like, now what's the next chapter?
Mm-hmm. So that's what I'm excited to explore. And the other thing I think about is like, I still got a lot of life left. I could try this financial advisement stuff and then I could go and do something entirely different. The decision I make today doesn't mean what is not deciding my life 10 years from now. It just is what I'm going to be doing next. And I think I'm on a continual exploration of like, what is the awesome, rich life for me?
And when you find that answer, let me know because there's a whole lot of people who want to learn from you. Like, cause that's the problem. Like none of us have the answer. There's not like, do this and you will be happy. Like,
well, I think our society tells us a lot of things that will make us happy, but are not necessarily, things that make us happy. I think that's standard life script. But I don't know. I've started thinking about my life as a series of experiments. Just kind of like, I'm interested in financial planning. Let me explore that. Does that work for me? Yes, no, I don't know. Like, let me go find. I've always been a person who's like, let me find out. Like, let me try it. If it doesn't work out, no big deal. Like, I'll just go doing something else.
That's fair. You're going to go into the world of advice. Let me kind of sum this up and ask you the big question, which is if you can give one advice to the soloists out there, kind of like working through this, what's the one piece of advice you would give?
I think, and this is advice for anybody really, but like become clear on what you want your life to be. Or like come up with some vision of the future and then plan for that. It's like it's backwards planning. So what we do in business, it's what you do. I've done instructional design for many years. So it's what you do when you design learning experiences. What do you want the end result to be? Let's start at the end and work backwards from that. So if you have a really strong vision of like, okay, here's what I want to do. Here's what I want my life to be. I've thought a lot about like, how do I want to feel? In my life, in the places that I live, how do I want to be engaged? If you can define those things, then I think the other stuff becomes easier. And I'm going to break the rule because I don't believe in just one thing. But I think it's really helpful to have somebody that you trust that can be a second opinion, because it can feel very lonely making financial and all your life decisions by yourself. And I'm fortunate to have a lot of friends who I really respect, admire, and trust. And so I can bounce ideas off of them. I've engaged professionals and experts like you, who can give me a second opinion. And I think that's really helpful. So you don't have to do it alone. You can engage with your friends. You can engage with professionals, to help you, at a minimum, just feel like, okay, I'm making the right decision. And even better for somebody to kind of challenge you, and say, is that really what you want to do? Is, you've told me all these things about what you want your life to be. Is this choice leading you there?
Yeah. And I think that's fair. I think for the soloist, that's a really important part, which is if you're in a couple, you can bounce ideas off each other. The good thing about being a soloist, you can do whatever you want. The bad thing is you can do whatever you want. How do I balance this? How do I figure out what I want? Because when you're talking about backwards engineering stuff, and I'm with you on it, you're not talking about what number do I have to hit.
No, I don't think that there's like one number that you have to hit. There's a life that you want to lead, and then numbers associated with that potentially. Yeah. So it's not so simple as to say like, I want to have $3 million by X date. How do I do it? It's really about saying, I want this to be my life, and how do I get there?
Yeah. And I've told people this over and over, but you can't get it till you get it. And you mentioned it yourself, which is just having more money doesn't make you feel more comfortable or more safe, whatever. Like, you have to figure out, what life do you want to live? Am I good with where I'm at? And just adding more zeros to your bank account does not help you fix it. I have people like, they'll hit their $1 million and they're like, well, that was easy. Let me go to 2, hit 2, and they go to 4. Like, what's the point?
Yeah. What's the point if you don't know where you're going? Like, money for the sake of money is honestly uninteresting. Like, I would not object if I had millions of dollars. Like, I'm not going to say no, right? But at the same time, I don't need that. I do think that it's been a very gradual progression for me as I've gotten more and built more and more assets. Because initially it was really nice to say, like, I have an emergency fund. And in my mind, at least, I could say, like, I choose to be here every day. I don't need this job. I think that's a really powerful thing, because I think a lot of people go in and they say, I need this job, I need this income. And that could be very, very true. But to be to the point where I can be like, I don't need this. And that really changed a lot of my behavior. It loosened things up for me. I felt like I could be more myself at work. And then eventually to get to this point where you'd be like, no, this doesn't work, and I'm out. I don't have to have the stress of finding something else or whatever. Like, that financial security really, really helps. But it's not about X amount. It's about what amount is right for you in the life you want to lead.
That's fair. So where can they find you? They want to read your article, be one of the 1 million people that have read it.
I'm writing articles on Substack, which hopefully you can put in the show notes.
Yeah.
I'd love for people to go over there and just reflecting on my life and the choices I've made. Yeah, come read it there.
What's the name of your Substack for those who that don't have to link handy?
That's the right thing to ask. I've called it the Spinster Syndicate.
All right. Like, okay, I got to ask, where's that name come from? I like it, but
Spinster is, I think, often a derogatory term for a single woman who supports herself. But I wanted to reclaim it as a positive term. So I'm a single woman who supports herself. And I liked syndicate because it's a collection, it's a group of people, and it kind of has this almost, I want to say like illegal feel to it, like mafia feel to it. And I was like, it almost feels a little illegal, a little kind of outside the norm to be a spinster and to embrace that. And so that's why I came to Spinster Syndicate, because, I feel like I'm living a life proudly that a lot of people feel, sometimes shame about. And I think that's a shame. I really love my life, and I don't need a partner or children to make meaning in my life.
Well, that's great. We'll end it right there, but thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, really enjoyed it.
If you enjoyed the show, please consider leaving a rating or review. We'd love to keep the conversation going. Please let us know your thoughts wherever comments are available, or email us at media@childfreewealth.com. To stay up to date, find and follow Childfree Wealth on social media. If you're interested in working with us, learn more by visiting our website, childfreewealth.com. We'll see you next time.